Hello, and welcome to You Should Hear This, a podcast for the Everyday Association professional. I'm Chris Beeman, your host. Today's podcast is brought to you by Visit Bloomington. In the heart of the U.S. Midwest, Bloomington, Indiana is the perfect place to host a small to mid-sized meeting, convention, or conference. Offering unique and flexible venues available to groups of up to 400 people, as well as a hub for higher education at Indiana University, a nationally revered culinary scene, and natural wonders like the Hoosier National Forest and Monroe Lake, Bloomington is sure to wow your guests during and after your event. Go to visitbloomington.com to start planning your next meeting. Speaking of meetings and events, I have the pleasure of introducing our guest today. Sara Stehle is an independent planner and owner of Wow Moments, Experience and Event Design. She has worked in the meeting and events industry since 2011 and has spent many years volunteering, mentoring, and advocating for her profession. Having worked for multiple associations, including the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the Society for Human Resource Management, Sara has managed events and conferences from 150 to 25,000 attendees, which include live, digital, and hybrid events. Sara's been highlighted in multiple publications, including Associations Now magazine, Smart Meetings magazine, and Meetings and Conventions magazine. She's a recipient of PCMA's 20 in Their 20s award and has been nominated for a PCMA Visionary Award in Digital Events, is an alumni of ASAE's Next Gen Group, and currently sits on ASAE's Meetings and Exposition Council. Last but not least, Sara holds the Certified Association Executive, CAE, and a Certified Meeting Planner, CMP distinctions. Welcome, Sara.
Hi, thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So is there anything about your background or experiences that you want to share with listeners before we get started?
Well, I think, Chris, with any good bio, you're seeing the best of me. So there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that kind of go behind all of those accolades and mentions that you talked about. So hopefully we can kind of talk about some of the stories behind some of those things today. One thing I will mention that's not in my bio is that I'm a proud mom of 3 little ones, my little blondies, Jackson, Aaron, and Anna. And I would never hear the end of it if I didn't give a shout out to them. So hi, guys.
I love it. I love it. Hopefully they'll be listening in.
Yeah, they were very excited for me today, so I'm excited
Aw,
to share it with them.
I love it. I love it. So you're super well connected, and I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing with us some of what you're seeing. What's really going on in the world of association events these days? Maybe speak to 2 or 3 trends that you're seeing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting place to be right now. I am seeing just a jam-packed schedule of events, both in person, virtual, and hybrid. I think associations right now are getting their stride back into what their schedules are looking like and whether they've decided to go the smaller, more intimate route, or they're hitting those pre-COVID large event annual conference numbers. At least the associations that I'm working with, their registration numbers are looking really great at this time. Couple trends that I'm seeing that I want to talk about is virtual events. I know we have a love-hate relationship with them, but virtual events are here. And for some groups, they are really working for them. I am working with a couple groups that are doing hybrid events, and I'm seeing the value, whether it's a value add for their members or they're repackaging it for marketing purposes, even using it as a new revenue stream to sell at a later time. I think experiential design is a huge topic right now. And that kind of goes into, getting attendees out the door. We need to have more than just education to go with the conferences that we're planning. There needs to be a reason for somebody to fly to a destination and to, spend that time away from home now. So finding new and budget friendly and exciting experiences is top of mind right now. It's a real challenge. And so I do a lot of research for my clients to present these new ideas that they can incorporate into their events. And then finally, I don't think we could talk about trends without talking about AI. The thing I'm still working on is how to make my life easier with AI. I get it for like marketing and visuals, but my world revolves around spreadsheets and PDFs. So trying to incorporate AI. Those are the articles that I'm trying to read and how I can make my life a little bit easier.
Yeah, it always seems strange to me to consider incorporating AI into events because it's like we're all humans
Hmm.
in this space, how can AI really fit in? I want to go back to something though. You used the term budget friendly, and I suspect that there were fellow association leaders who sort of picked up on that because I think there's sort of 2 things at play there. One is budget friendly for the association, right? We wanna save money and maximize our resource, and we also wanna create these budget friendly experiences for our attendees because we know the economy ebbs and flows, and there are times where right now we're seeing some of our costs go up, right? We go to the
Hmm.
grocery store, and I think each of us are feeling it a little bit more these days. So, could you talk a little bit about how you help associations consider what they should be thinking about when it comes to budget, whether it's on the attendee side or cost savings for the association?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I want to kind of talk about it in both ways, both the attendee side and the association side. Obviously, your attendees, they're going to have a couple different big ticket costs. One is going to be their registration rate, two is going to be their flight, three is going to be housing. Those are kind of the biggest costs, and then all you've got all your little things, your travel, your food, all of that. So, starting with registration rate, you have to, as the organization is kind of planning out what those costs are going to be. I don't think that the organizations are digging deep into what their actual costs are. So, understanding how much an attendee actually costs my organization to come to this conference is something that I'm trying to work with my groups on. One of my groups is the Virginia Hazmat Association, and we just went through this. We had to have a full on list of from start to finish how much an attendee is going to cost because what they're finding is that their costs are not covering what the actual cost of the attendee is. So making it as affordable as possible, but still covering your costs is important. And then selecting destinations that are going to be budget friendly for attendees is also important, especially if your attendees are cost conscious. You may be able to get cheap flights to Las Vegas, but you're going to have a $50 lunch. So, understanding what the costs the attendees are going to experience is just as important as selecting a location that's going to check all the boxes that you need it to. Then on the organization side, there's a lot of different factors that go into an event, and it really just kind of depends on what is going into that event. Do you have a large general session that has thousands of dollars of AV equipment? Are you using that general session one time and spending 100 grand on it? Are there other ways that you can incorporate some of those pieces of equipment or use that time a little bit better to save on some costs throughout your program? Thinking about things like that is something that I'm working with different clients on. Other factors like how can we reuse materials? I have quite a few groups that are very environmentally conscious. So understanding what they want and how to not necessarily reduce costs, but make a better impact on the environment is really important. And so just trying to work with them on how they can make those goals attainable is one thing that we're working on too.
I love that. Yeah, I'm hearing so much more around environmentally friendly events and achieving
Mhm.
ESG goals and, through some of our programming. And so, that even raises some questions in my mind about some of the things that associations I work with and for are doing that, could help save some money in the long run if we're able to repurpose some of what we've used in the past, but also not throw so much paper and foam and all those fun materials into the trash cans. So speaking
Yeah.
of speaking of some things maybe we wouldn't miss, what's something about events that you wouldn't miss, whether it's part of the planning phases, on-site experiences, meeting spaces? What's something that you personally would like to see us get rid of forever?
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back real quick to your environmentally friendly, the thing that hurts my heart most is at the end of an event when we throw away all the signs. I just want to save them from the landfill, but I can't. I can't save all of them. But it definitely hurts my heart. One thing, BEO edits, there's got to be a better way. I don't understand how I have gone this far. There's so much technology around us, and I still have to make edits to a PDF, send it back to my venue, have them make edits in their system, and then pray that they got all the changes right. I just don't understand. There's got to be a better solution out there. I will pay someone copious amounts of money to fix it. If you're out there listening, please contact me. And really, the other thing, like Wi-Fi, why are we spending so much money on Wi-Fi? There are convention centers and hotels out there that are giving it away for free. And then there are other hotels out there that they charge $30,000 just to get your foot in the door. I just don't understand not only the outrageous cost, but the wide range of costs of Wi-Fi. We all know that you can get it for free or a very reasonable cost. And it's, I'll get off my soapbox on this, but Wi-Fi, I could do without.
Yeah, and it seems like I mean, that's something that meeting attendees, conference attendees are going to expect, right? No matter what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing, one of my clients had a gala last year and I didn't get Wi-Fi because it was a gala. I didn't expect that I was going to need it, but they had a silent auction that you had to have like it was a live silent auction. And so people were asking for the Wi-Fi password and we had no Wi-Fi password. So, thankfully a lot of people just, got on their network, but those are things that I never thought I would need, but you do. And
Right.
so just understanding why the cost is there. Like I don't understand.
Yeah, right.
I could try and play devil's advocate, but at the same time, like, no.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, especially I mean to you, the point you raised, there's such variable, there's places giving it away for free, there's places that are charging, extreme rates and everything in between. And so it doesn't feel quite like there's an equitable approach to the,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
Wi-Fi pricing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. A lot of my attend associations are, really small. I have an association where there's 5 staff. And so for me to go to them and say, "Oh, hey guys, your Wi-Fi is going to cost you $60,000 when they got it for free the year before at a different venue." Like they can't justify that. And so that's a very different experience for their attendees if they don't have that. The attendees are expecting it. And so to have that be a limiting factor to the experience is something that is just really hard for my clients to understand because in their mind, Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi. So why should there be a $60,000 difference in having the same experience?
Right. Well, and when you're looking at your bottom line, you're taking $60,000 away then from that attendee experience, right? You're trying to do budget cuts around food and beverage, or you've got to cut a keynote out, or you've got to, and those are things that people also enjoy, but the Wi-Fi is sort of that expected. If I'm going to show up to this event, I better be able to log on my phone somehow, right?
Yeah, when you think about like Laszlo's basic needs, in our day and age, Wi-Fi is a basic need now. You can't expect someone to go to an event for 3 days and not get on their computer at some point.
Right.
Uh, and, my phone, I can get Wi-Fi off my phone, but computers don't have the same capabilities as a phone does. So you're just asking for people to get mad at you. And, that's not necessarily the fault of the organization because it's a limiting factor in some of these cases.
Well, I think I'd love to turn our attention to gonna lean in a bit here to your company name, and that is, what are some innovative strategies that you're seeing that really add value to the attendee experience and get them saying, "Wow."
Yeah. I named my company Wow Moments because I wanted someone to walk into a room and just look around and say, wow, like that was really the whole reasoning behind it. And when I work with clients about experience, and that's what we're really talking about in this particular case is the experience of the event. I start by asking them about the why behind their event. And what's interesting is I think some of these long-standing associations really forget the why. Like they have an annual conference because they have it every year. You know, they've had it for 100 years, they've had it for 50 years. They don't really understand what the why is anymore. And so starting off with that, we're asking people to get out of their homes, to fly around the country, eat chicken or salmon for 3 days in a ballroom with no windows. Like there's got to be a reason we want these people to come to our event. And so a lot of the associations that I work with are education based. And so providing continuing education to their attendees ends up being the why a lot. And so if you dig deeper, you know, you want them to learn, but you also want them to be your advocate. You want them to feel connected to the association and for them to feel like your association's the go-to place for the answers for their professional problems. So from there, we start looking at how to make someone feel this way, how to make them feel connected to your organization. And, you know, when you're thinking about this, don't be afraid to use all of the senses. Lighting and music can be just as important as words on a screen. And so the value add, you know, we talked about this a little bit, the value add doesn't have to be a ton of money. And there's a lot of options to create small and impactful moments that they can remember when they talk about your event to other people. And that's what we really want. We want people to go away from this conference remembering these small, impactful moments so that they tell other people. And then next year they get really excited and they bring those people with them.
And I love that you share that. I think as someone who attends conferences, I'm always looking for that extra special touch. You know, what did they do to are their napkins the color of their brand? Do they have I mean, just those small details that they've put into the planning, I think are often, to me, more impressive than even the selection of the keynote, because that's sort of a one and done thing, right? But finding those things and sometimes I even like to find them hidden, right? Like the things that aren't always super visible, but yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I love the little touches. I'll talk about it just real quick. There was a group that I worked with last year called 15.5, and I really loved working with them because they were so focused on the experience of the event. Their event was 3 days long, and they had a different mood for each day. Like they had a camping theme, and they wanted the first day to be like the sunrise. So it was like the sunrise colors, and then the second day was like during the day colors, and then the third day was like a sunset color. And I just felt that that was a really beautiful way to have this experience. And I don't know if the attendees necessarily picked up on it, but I sure did throughout all of the planning process. And I just love that they had such a clear vision of how they wanted to make their attendees feel throughout the process.
Absolutely. That sounds really cool.
Mhm.
So we know, but of course, virtual and hybrid events are running on technology, but even in-person events increasingly are fueled by technology. We can't do a lot of what we do without the use of technology. And so I'm curious from your vantage point, what are some cutting edge technologies that we should all be aware of and or using to plan and or execute our event?
This one's a really hard one for me because we could spend hours just talking about event tech. There's literally thousands of possible programs and apps that you can use for your different events. So I'll start by saying that when you look at event tech and tech companies, finding something that helps with 80% of your problem is a great place to start. Because I think that we try so hard to find a solution that's going to check every box that we end up missing the point, which is to make our lives a little bit easier. Have things happen a little faster and be able to focus on our membership is really why we want this technology. And I think a lot of times when I'm hearing people talk about tech, they want it to check every single box, which is just not possible. And they end up spending thousands of dollars on customization and things like that. There's a few categories that I can talk about. I want to break it up to before an event and during an event. And AI is one of the main things that I'm seeing right now. We talked about AI a little bit at the beginning, but event marketing is really leaning hard into AI, whether it's, writing session descriptions or marketing campaigns or even graphics for event marketing. I'm not an event marketer and I don't pretend to be. And so, this is something that I'm seeing, but it's not something that is in my wheelhouse. I've definitely used ChatGPT to test the waters on what's possible. But again, I think I said it at the beginning. I'm still trying to find where AI is helping in my world. And so, I would love to get some more information. If anybody out there is, really rocking the AI world with event planners, please let me know. Now, I am seeing some AI tools where it comes to note taking software. And so having a bot to take my notes on calls that I'm on all day and give me a synopsis afterwards is really helpful. Zoom already built this into its platform, but there's other options like Firefly or Otter AI out there that are doing not only the note taking, but the synopsis and calling out action items, which I find really interesting. One thing before an event too, one of the things I fully haven't embraced in the technology world is site sourcing software. So Cvent's been around for ages and we all know and love and hate Cvent, but there's a but there's a newer group called Hopskip that has some really interesting features that I think is going to get a lot of people's attention. And right now they just have hotels on their sourcing site, but I think it's this year. They're coming out with convention RFP sourcing. So I think once that comes out, it's going to be not only a really useful tool, but a big competitor to Cvent. During an event, if you're giving a presentation, audience engagement is one of those things that I just think is it's expected. So there's a couple of tools that I could point out. Slido is a great polling tool that you can use. And the nice thing is you can embed it right into PowerPoint presentations. I think it's been around for a while now, but they've definitely worked out the kinks of how Slido works. And then this other cool tool is called Stream Alive. Again, it's a different polling feature, but it's got a few different polling options that I really love. I used this for a global event and we had a map of the world up where people could put in where they were sitting. And it kind of turned into a heat map of the world, which was just really, really cool to see. We had about 30 different countries represented in that event. And it was just, very humbling to kind of see that there were people in Chile logging in at 6 o'clock in the morning to your event. And Chris, really, there's so many kinds of event tech out there. There's augmented reality, help desk bots, virtual reality. There's so many that we could talk about, but what I would say is do the research on the things that you really are interested in. And even looking at other organizations to see what they found to be useful is the advice that I would give to someone talking about event tech.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing the 80%, rule too, because I'm one of those people that I feel like if I'm gonna invest in tech, if we're gonna adopt new technology, it can and should do it all, and I have found that if someone tells me it can do 100% of what I want it to do, they're lying, and I just don't know exactly what it can't do yet, and then I'm really frustrated to find out later, "Oh, it can't actually do this, it was just something they kinda said." So, I think finding that 80% is gonna, give you more confidence in what it truly can do and be for you, versus thinking that it can do it all. So that was something that I appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people get really hung up on that. And then the other thing too is that I think so many people are so afraid to launch something with 80%. We want it to be 100%. We want to know all the ins and outs of it. And, in the reality, 80% is a passing score. Not that we want our tech to fail that 20% of the time, but there's a lot of learning that goes into event tech. And I just feel like we need to give ourselves some grace when we introduce something that we might not have all of the answers at the beginning.
So the last thing I really wanted to kind of dive in with you on is the idea that something I've heard about, but I've never really seen in action. is the idea of immersive experiences. And I was hoping you could shed some light on what this means and maybe an example or two of how you incorporate them into events.
Yeah. So before I talk about this, I do want to share a quick story about a college class that I took. I just find that this is so fitting. I had an art history class and we were talking about Mark Rothko, and he made these really large canvases that were like large color block paintings. And the way he wanted you to experience it was to get really close to it so that you were so close that your side vision didn't see wall. It was just immersed into the painting. And that's how he wanted you to experience it to get the full effect. And so after college, I was in an art gallery in DC and they had a Rothko. And I was so excited because here I was going to experience this painting in person, how it was supposed to be. And I got right up to it like you were supposed to and tripped the alarm. So security wasn't too happy. And I didn't get as close to it as I wanted to say the least. So that's really an extreme example of an immersive experience when you're transporting someone into a world that you create. And there's a ton of groups that do this, like South by Southwest, Dreamforce, some of the large Comic Cons. But all of these groups spend millions of dollars doing this. And for many associations, that's just not possible. I don't know if you've ever gotten to experience Dreamforce, but they literally close a street down and make like a jungle. I mean, it's just incredible. But again, thousands and thousands of dollars, millions. But there's so many other kinds of immersive experiences that you can do on a smaller scale. And I think when you talk about, what associations are capable of, that's your goal. We're trying to make those memorable moments for people on a small scale. An intimate atmosphere where you can control the attendee surroundings is really what we're looking for. So a couple examples that come to mind. There's some groups that I've seen that have done sessions where they give you a blindfold at the start of the session. And it's to promote inclusion in the conversation where you remove someone's appearance so that you're more likely to have an open and meaningful conversation during the session. And then I talked about 15.5 a little bit ago. During that event where they used color to transform their space, the space that we went into had gray walls and brown columns. And so we brought out our pink and orange and we did a ton of signage and wall clings to just make their space their own. They had a camping theme like I talked about. So we had trail maps and life plans, fire pits, and like the centerpiece of it all was this 6 foot tall fiberglass grizzly bear. Her name was Claudia. She was amazing. And it was one of the most visually appealing events that I ever did. And the attendees just really loved it. And, it goes back to that thought like, have a moment that your attendees can talk about so that they get excited for the next year and they bring a friend. I think more groups would benefit through thinking through some immersive experiences to see if it's something that they can try out on a small scale. I just, like, what's your version of a silent disco, really?
That's an interesting question. I'm also intrigued by the concept of having a blindfold on while speaking. I mean, we used in conversation, we use so many nonverbal cues and appearances to sort of guide what we're saying and how we're saying it, and I think removing that, I don't know, it's very interesting to me. Yeah, no, I really appreciate your time today to share a little bit about creating some wow moments. I've taken quite a bit away from today and some new ideas and questions. I'm gonna be thinking a lot about what our version of a silent disco is.
That
Um,
should
gonna
be
be
that should be the caption. What's your version of a silent disco?
Right, right. I love it. So, Sarah, I know there'll be some people who listen in on this who'd like to connect. And so, if people would like to learn more about your work or talk to you, how can they be in touch?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's wowmoments.org. There's a form that you can fill out to connect with me, but LinkedIn is really the best place to find me. I try posting on there quite often. I feel like it's my workplace version to connect with people. And then you can also send me an email. My email is Sarah with no H. So that's SARA at wowmoments.org.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, Sarah. I really appreciate it and look forward to hearing what others think about the podcast today and the questions that they take away. And thanks again to Visit Bloomington for sponsoring today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode of You Should Hear This. If you have any questions that you'd like answered or future topics you'd like us to explore, please send us an email at info@isae.org. Thank you for your leadership of your associations, and I'll see you over on the next episode of You Should Hear This.